On the morning of September 11th, 2001, the United States endured an atrocity so horrifying it birthed a new era of American life. 19 terrorists and the ones commanding them brought America to the brink of collapse by committing the most violent terrorist attack in history. It's considered by some to be the most documented thing to happen on this planet. The entire world was speechless and ushered into an era of fear and confusion. America has not been the same since, and it likely never will. 4 planes were all it took to bring the most powerful country in history to its knees. A clear Tuesday morning in New York City was broken by the sound of an explosion at 8:46 a.m. At that moment, American Airlines Flight 11, a Boeing 767 with 92 people on board, including 5 hijackers, smashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. The hijackers murdered the pilots with box cutters, locked the cabin doors, and guided the plane to its doom. Following a fireball, a gaping wound opened at the top of the building, black smoke, loose paper, and wreckage spilling out. Most people were confused. Some said it was a jet, others said it was a small prop plane, and others thought it was a bomb, like the one that exploded in the basement of the Trade Center in 1993. And of course, how could a plane hit the World Trade Center, the tallest building in the country, on a clear day? Was it a mechanical issue? A computer glitch? A rogue, suicidal pilot wanting to go out in style? Or something else? 17 minutes later, everyone had their answer. At 9:03 a.m., United Airlines Flight 175, another Boeing 767, hit the South Tower, immediately killing 65 people aboard and many more in the building. Live television coverage of the disaster caught the moment of impact. Screams erupted around the nation, especially in New York, as people realized it. This is not an accident. New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani knew it too. He said, "I realized I was in some kind of horrible, awful, horrific human experience." A total recall of New York City firefighters went into effect. On the clock or off, everyone was to report to duty immediately. The FAA shut down the national airspace. All planes were to land at the next available airport, no matter where. Fighter jets replaced them, intending to shoot down any plane suspected of being hijacked. President Bush was at a Florida elementary school visiting a class of children when his chief of staff, Andy Card, famously ran up to him and whispered in his ear, "A second plane hit the second tower. America is under attack." As New Yorkers watched the burning towers in horror, they saw things falling out the windows, then heard them smashing onto the ground or on the roofs. But these were not things. They were people. They fell either leaning out windows trying to breathe fresh air, or because they decided it was better to die this way. In the towers, workers descended the stairs, coughing up smoke and dodging flames. The elevators had fallen, so stairs were the only option. 110 stories to traverse, with firefighters ascending them to try and save trapped office workers. Many would not come back. People above where the planes hit were trapped. There was no way to get by the wreckage and get out of the building. As smoke filled their lungs, they called loved ones, often to say their goodbyes. Passengers on the hijacked planes did the same once they realized what was happening. At 9:37 a.m., a Boeing 757, American Airlines Flight 77, struck the Pentagon, killing 64 more in the plane and 125 in the building. 20 minutes later, United Airlines Flight 93, another Boeing 757, crashed into a field in Somerset, Pennsylvania. The passengers of Flight 93 found out through phone calls what the terrorists were going to do with them, and burst into the cockpit to try and take the plane back from the hijackers. The terrorists, knowing they wouldn't make it to their target, put the plane to a nosedive in response, killing everyone on board when it speared into a field. It's widely believed Flight 93's target was either the White House or the Capitol. Those passengers are heroes. At 9:59 a.m., the South Tower fell. The whole thing collapsed into smoke and dust, filling the streets and killing almost everyone inside. People ran and ducked into buildings to escape the waves of smoke. The North Tower did the same 30 minutes later. From a distance, the aftermath looked almost like a nuclear bomb exploded in Manhattan. As people navigated through the dust, gagging and choking, they heard nothing but the screeching of sirens from the firefighters' equipment. It's designed to sound if they stop moving. When the dust finally cleared, the site of the World Trade Center was a city block of shattered steel, glass, and concrete. It was unrecognizable in every capacity. It took months to clear the rubble from the streets. The Pentagon was less damaged visually, but still required extensive repairs. When the dead were counted, it totaled 2,996, which included 343 FDNY firefighters. Many more died in the years after from the various things they inhaled, especially after the towers collapsed. While far lower than the tens of thousands initially feared dead, this still makes 9/11 the deadliest terrorist attack in history. It was thanks to quick action from people inside the buildings and the many, many heroes who helped them that the number wasn't higher. It didn't take long for the perpetrators to be found. The terrorist group known as Al-Qaeda. The mastermind was Osama bin Laden, the man responsible for the World Trade Center bombing of 1993. He immediately became the most wanted and most hated man on the planet. Americans wanted nothing more than to see him hanged. Nothing could fix the broken hearts across the nation, nor the hate and anger consuming its citizens. People tried coming together in the aftermath, and for a while, they did. President Bush's approval rating surged to record levels, likely securing his 2004 re-election single-handedly. Thousands volunteered to look for bodies in the remains of the towers, to clean up the streets of debris, and to give blood. But before long, unity gave way to division. The Bush administration used 9/11 to justify numerous wars in the Middle East, including the extremely controversial war in Iraq. It started purportedly to stop terrorism, but in actuality was more about Middle Eastern oil reserves than national security. These wars increased the presence of terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS in the Middle East, especially as tens of thousands of non-combatants were caught up in America's war, seemingly justifying everything they'd been told about America. 9/11 also led to a significant rise in Islamophobia in the United States and in much of the Western world, with many Muslims reporting all kinds of harassment. Many also blame the attacks for a rise in American nationalism and jingoism, something that continues today. Donald Trump won the presidency in 2016 by tapping into nationalism and fears of Islamic extremism. One of Trump's staunchest defenders has been Rudy Giuliani, who went from being America's mayor in the early 2000s to one of the most ridiculed figures in politics. Along with that, 9/11 spawned countless conspiracy theories. Many believe the planes were hijacked by American agents, or that the government knew the attacks were coming and let them happen to justify a war in the Middle East. It is known, that in President Bush's daily briefing on August 6, 2001, there was an excerpt that claims bin Laden was determined to strike the US using hijacked aircraft. Some take things further, claiming the planes were missiles in disguise, that the people on board them never existed, even that the planes were holograms and that the buildings were brought down by bombs. Many of these theories have little basis in reality, but they show where people's minds have gone since that terrible day in 2001. Terrible as it is to say, Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda won. Perhaps not the way they thought or hoped they would, but their mission was a resounding success. In the span of a few hours, they shattered the American psyche. They broke the wills of hundreds of millions with 4 planes and some box cutters. They caused irreparable damage to American society, damage that seems to get worse every day. Bin Laden won't see the end result. He was killed by Navy SEALs in 2011. But if America dies, he is arguably its murderer, and he did it on September 11th, 2001.